What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, reviewing today's Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. This game has been surprisingly controversial. Over the course of last week, I've seen a huge war online as to whether or not this game is good, if it's bad, or some people calling it a downright ripoff. So what I decided to do is I purchased this as early as possible, and I've been playing it pretty much non-stop. I mean, to be clear right here at the start, I'm kind of addicted to this game, even though I've beaten it several times before. This is honestly the original version of this back on the Nintendo Wii. It is my very favorite Wii game that's ever been released, so much so that I purchased it again when they re-released it on the 3DS. But now that it's on the Switch, this game is supposed to be special, because they said right in the title, this is the definitive edition. It is supposed to be the pinnacle of Xenoblade awesomeness, and in many ways, it definitely nails that mark. There are a lot of subtle changes to this game that make it a much better experience, from tweaks to the combat, additional things to make the map more easy to understand, to even like time trials that have been included in the game to make it where while you're playing, there is always a lot of very fun things to do just all around you. But there is some technical aspects of this that I am honestly very disappointed about. So let's start off by talking about what makes this game good, before we really kind of shred it for the parts that are a bit of a travesty. Xenoblade has always been a game that is very, very big. I mean, the best way to describe it is literally giant. Chronicles takes place on the back of these giant dead gods, creatures the size of planets that people are able to live upon. They have their own gravity, and so you're constantly trying to climb and explore and see these mechanized universes. It's gorgeous, and the only way to really get into it is to say that at times it's quite frankly breathtaking. There are so many just huge vistas and cool boss fights and so many things in this that are just wall-to-wall fantastic. But the big thing that always made it shine, in my opinion, is the combat. This is an action RPG, and one that kind of follows in the footsteps of classic Final Fantasy. It is turn-based combat, but one where you can constantly circle around your target, queue up special attacks, and get ready for an ultimate ability that can knock an enemy on its butt and do triple damage. There's a lot of stuff in this game that is just so freaking well constructed, and in the definitive edition, they've managed to make it even better. Like, one of the things I love the most about the ways that they've changed battles is there's a little bit of confusion in the other versions of this game, because a lot of your skills and special abilities, they require you be standing in a certain spot. Like, one of my favorite skills has something where if I'm standing beside an enemy, I can stab into its guts and make it take extra damage. It completely shreds its defense. And in the other versions of this game, you couldn't really tell what specifically is the side. I mean, at what point am I in the correct zone for trying to hit an attack? So you kind of just had to blindly use these skills and hope that you were in the correct position when it finally executes. Here they've decided to put these little exclamation points when it's the correct time to try and unleash a certain skill. And it definitely makes it where, even though that sounds like a small change, I found myself playing a lot more intelligently because I could properly combo together skills. Being able to chain together attacks is a huge, very important tactic. A lot of these enemies have hundreds of thousands of health, and if you're going to survive an encounter, you need to be able to stop, take your time, and really dig into their weaknesses. So the fact that now the game gives you extra information to clearly display when and where you should be just trying to decimate them, it's fantastic. And you especially appreciate this when you see the new content like the time trials. These are like these things, these actually existed in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 as like special challenge modes, and they've just decided to take that and add it into Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. So while you're playing, you occasionally will just see these little red creepy portals pop up, and if you choose to throw yourself in there, you can do these extra cool battles that are more difficult and more rewarding. I like that this game tries to do stuff to make it where you feel more invested in the fights. The story and universe is very much the same, and it kind of follows the exact same path, but it's the tweaks to combat that make this even more addictive, especially because they've decided to add in an ultra easy mode called casual, in case you just want to see this plot, and also expert mode, which lets you personally tweak your levels to be up or down to increase the difficulty or make it where you can actually just power level one specific character and make them ultra strong. All of these mechanics are so well done and kind of just make make it where the game itself gets a chance to shine brighter on its own and collectively. Like, even something else I liked is that in the other versions of this game, it was very difficult to do side quests at times because there were hundreds and hundreds of people that you could help out, from finding lost keys to slaying monsters, but at times it was difficult because the minimap is just so bland. I mean, the map itself would kind of just give you a vague hand wave and say, go over that hill and slay the beast. And it was so kind of just vague, you couldn't find stuff easily. I mean, back in the day, I'm not ashamed to admit this, I had to look up a lot of different strategy guides and stuff to do a lot of these quests because they were just so bland that at times I would get lost trying to execute on them. Well, look at this. They have updated the map so you can put your own quest markers, you can put stuff in track specific objectives, and there's this little dotted line to show you a path. Because these environments are so massive in scope, a lot of times they have multiple floors and underground dungeons and elevators that take you to a different section of these behemoths altogether. It's helpful to have a minimap that is as accurate as it needs to be. Now, of everything I like in this game, I do want to dig into the one part that definitely disappoints me, which is unfortunately the graphics. Now, if you've been subscribed to this channel for a bit and you watch a lot of my reviews, I'm sure you realize that typically everything in my reviews I try and render at 1080p. I want to make sure that it's the maximum graphical fidelity. Well, this video is 720p, and that is on purpose, and that's because this game only goes up to 720p. Now, before you say, DreamcastGuy, 720p is still HD, that still looks pretty good, well, here's the thing, I have to say up to, because things scaled down a lot. Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition has a system called dynamic resolution, which means that the more there's explosions on screen, or crazy cutscenes, or a particularly massive environment, it unfortunately completely crashes the graphics themselves. It lowers the resolution down to sub HD to try and make it where it can maintain the frame rate and keep things moving, and at times it gets pretty bad. Now, in docked, it's understandable. Honestly, when I'm playing it in docked mode, which 99% of the time I was, things looked pretty good. It never got so muddy that I wasn't able to understand what was going on screen. It just kind of, it taints the experience of some of the bigger and more beautiful places. I kind of wish that it was able to maintain a higher resolution because it seems like this game, which is based on 10-year-old assets, it seems like it should be able to run better and stay more beautiful because so many other games do. I mean, keep in mind, just to make a completely unfair example, think about, this is Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild came out 3 years ago, like coming up on 4 years ago is when they were developing this game. It looks this freaking good. Side by side, how is this running at a static 1080p and looking amazing when this game over here that's brand new can barely hold 720p even at its best? And things unfortunately get a lot worse when we switch over to handheld. Oh my gosh, this is, in my opinion, borderline unplayable. At times, I got very frustrated because it kind of ruined some of my favorite moments. Like this right here, this is just such a super gorgeous forest. Graphically, it is so freaking cool to see how they've just able to construct such a fairy tale forest, and unfortunately, I cannot see hardly anything when I'm playing this on handheld, and this happens everywhere. I mean, it kind of blows my mind that they decided to release this because the handheld version is just so incomplete. It definitely seems like they needed some extra patches to make it where this game would look good when it's in your pocket and not just a sloppy mess. Now, the final part of this game I have to talk about as carefully as possible, which is the completely newly added content called Future Connected. This is a 10-hour bonus chapter that takes place after the story itself, and I can't talk too much about it. I mean, to be clear, there will be absolutely no spoilers. I'm not going to get into the writing or the plot, but one of the things I want to note is that I think that it is extremely well done. Something I think that happens in a lot of games is that you can't imagine what happens after the conclusion. Like, what happens after Link saves the world? What do the heroes do when the great evil is defeated? I think that this game, more than anything, I really respect that Future Connected manages to give us such a brilliant supplemental thing. It really gives us a secondary look about why this game is so great, and really I have to say this, the future connected stuff, this is by far the best content in the entire game. Graphically, the way you fight, some of the changes and tweaks they've made to the universe itself, it is a very rewarding way to round out this world. It feels like a true reward for the people that have managed to beat the game and want to keep playing. If you're curious about Xenoblade Chronicles, I don't regret buying it. $60 is a lot of money. This is not something I can just laugh at, but I still feel like I wish that it managed to look a little bit better. If you've never played Xenoblade Chronicles, or you've only played Xenoblade 2 and you've been curious about the first game, this is truly the definitive edition. I can say that for certainty after having put so many hours into this. This is the very best version of the game. It's the best version of Xenoblade that's probably ever going to exist, but I do wish that it had been a tiny bit better. Okay, so we've heard some good and some bad, but let's go over the ratings board and put a big number on it. I am giving Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition an 8.5 out of 10. Thanks so much for the crazy support this week, everybody, and hello to all the new subscribers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave me a comment down below, and subscribe if you haven't already, but do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Oh my gosh, this game is just so freaking big, but I guess I gotta get back to it. More side quests to do. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.